Let's wrap up this playlist by abusing Peter Hollins again, taking the other part of his video that we used earlier, and this part really gives you a good flavor of the thinking process in between match points and imps. And then what we need to do is talk a little bit about the stuff that's really not here.
Now we actually want to get into the meat of how does the bridge scoring work in comparisons with match points and with imps. So let's talk about imps first. So what happens with imps is you get two comparisons. You just compare with one other person, and it matters how big your score difference actually is. So if the difference was between 0 and 10, you get no imps. So what you can see here is that from 0 to 10, the imp's worth 0. Whereas if you got a game swing where you score somewhere in the 450 points, then you actually get 10 imps for that. So you compare, you work out what your score was, what your opponent's score is, work out what the difference is, and that's how many imps you can actually get. So it goes all the way up to 24 imps, so each board can have a huge swing, and the Grand Slam choices are really important, game contracts are important, whereas part scores, they scale a lot less. Whereas in match points, what it is just a comparison of how many people you beat. Now, it doesn't matter if you beat them by 1,000 points or if you beat them by 10 points. As long as you got a higher score than them, you've actually beaten them. But what match points does is you can have more than one comparison. So if you have 10 comparisons, so there's you and 9 others. If you beat all the other people, you get 100%. If you lost to everyone, you get 0%. So it works out how many people did you actually beat and puts it into a percentage. Now, the way it usually works is we'll bring up a smaller one. Let's say that there is actually just 2 opponents. So here we've got your score, we've got the opponent's score 1 and the opponent's score 2. Okay. If you beat them, you get 2 points. If you draw, you get 1 point. And if you lose, you get no points per person you beat. And then, out of 4, what we do is we give this a percentage. So on hand 1, our score was 620. One opponent got 170 and one opponent got 140. So we get 2 points for beating both of them twice. So we get 4 points and 100% on that first board. On hand number 2, we scored 420. The next person scored 420 and someone else scored 430. So we draw with one person and we lose to the other. So we would score 1 point, 1 out of 4, 25%. Hand number 3, we got 1430, the opponent's got 680, and then the final opponent got minus 100. So we beat both of them, so again we get 100%. And on hand number 4, we got minus 110. Next opponent got plus 110 and then minus 100. Now we got the lowest score again, so this one would be 0%. So this is how you work it out. Usually it's with lots more comparisons though, and you work out how many people did you beat or draw. And even those 10-point difference actually matter. Now, if you're looking at imp scoring, this would be 10 imps for the first board and 0 imps for the second board. So imps, there's a wide variety between how important certain boards are, but with match points, every single board is equally important. Now, they're both really interesting forms of scoring, and they've got different actual challenges. So let's talk about what you're aiming to do, whether it be match points or imps. So in imps, which actually stands for international match points, but that's where the name imps actually comes from. Imps, what you actually want to do is bid game really aggressively. Because if you can bid game, you don't need to make it that often. It's somewhere between like 35 and 40% depending whether if you're not vol or vulnerable. Such that if you're vulnerable, you want to be bidding really aggressively to game. And if you're right on the line of bidding good games, then you'd be going down more often than you'd be making them because the reward is so good whenever you actually make it. Whereas in match points, the reward for bidding game isn't that good. Like, you want to be making game 50% of the time. Whereas in imps, you can be making it less than 50% of the time and still getting a good expected value out of it. So imps bid game really aggressively. Match points, you don't need to do it as much. The second thing is trying to make your contract. In imps, you really want to make your contract. You're not too worried about over tricks. So if you're in 4 hearts, making 4 hearts is your main priority, and secondary priority is can we make extra tricks? Because an over trick might be worth about 1 imp, whereas making or not making your game contract is usually worth around 10. So making your contract in imps, very important. Whereas in match points, making a contract isn't the most important thing. It's just beating your opponents. If you make 4 hearts and your opponent's making an extra trick, then you're actually losing the board and getting 0%. So here in match points, over tricks are really important. So you want to go for over tricks even if it risks your contract, if you think it's above 50% proposition. So if you think that making an extra trick is better than 50-50, then you should go for it, even if it will risk you going off in your contract. So match points, over tricks, really important. At imps, making your contract is really important. Other things about match points is often you want to play in no trumps, because no trumps scores that 10 extra points for that first trick. So if you are making the same number of tricks in no trumps as you are in a suit contract, then you want to be in no trumps. So you really want to go for that. So at match points, if you bid to a slam, it's very often that you'll just try for 6 no trumps, unless you think that's just a terrible idea. Because that 10-point bonus can swing a lot of match points. Whereas in imps, you just want to be in the safest slam, because making your contract is the most important thing, and that 0 to 10 difference isn't actually relevant. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to cover today in talking about how bridge scoring works.
So what have we missed in our team game discussion? First, we missed board match teams. That's a game that allows your team to play as though it were match points. You're going to get a win, a loss, or a draw on every single board. And at the end of the game, that's what counts. The other thing we missed is an individual game, which is played at match points. It looks an awful lot like the 4-deal bridge that we're going to discuss in a moment as we conclude. You change partners each round, and then at the very end, you actually get an individual result. The last thing I can talk about here is a barometer game, where your scores are actually posted as you go, so that everybody can see where they are, how they're doing as the event progresses. It can lead to some really wild last few boards as people are shooting the moon to try and have a great result, or they don't care, so they're doing everything like crazy. It's kind of an interesting game to do after midnight in a tournament. We'll finish this up with 4-deal rubber bridge, and I'll do a separate video on that.